Sometimes a story doesn't begin with confidence or glamour. Sometimes it begins with pain, confusion, and a childhood that leaves marks no one can see. Carly Simon's life was like that. Before she was famous, before she wrote one of the most mysterious and talked about songs in music history, she was a quiet girl trying to make sense of a world that often felt heavy, unfair, and full of secrets. Her journey from a shy child to a powerful songwriter wasn't simple, and it definitely wasn't easy. But every heartbreak, every betrayal, every moment of loneliness shaped the voice that millions of people would later hear. It shaped the woman who wrote You're So Vain, the song that would keep the world guessing for more than 50 years. People think songs come from one moment, one person, one broken heart. But Carly knew better. When she wrote You're So Vain in 1972, it wasn't about one man. It wasn't even about one relationship. She poured years of experiences into that song, 3 different men, 3 different stories, and 3 different wounds that never fully healed. For decades she stayed silent about the truth. She let the world argue and guess. Men in Hollywood proudly claimed the song was about them, thinking it made them look irresistible. They didn't know Carly had written something far more complicated and far more personal than any of them imagined. Only now, after half a century, is she finally revealing what inspired those famous lyrics. And the truth is more surprising than anyone expected. Carly Simon was born on June 25, 1943, in Manhattan. The world was in the middle of war, and her own world was shaped by privilege and pressure. Her family lived in the wealthy Riverdale area of the Bronx. Her father, Richard L. Simon, co-founded Simon & Schuster, one of the biggest publishing houses in the world. Their home was full of books stacked on polished shelves, classical music from a grand piano, and quiet, unspoken expectations. It was the kind of house where everything looked perfect from the outside. But inside, things were far from perfect. Every summer the family escaped to Martha's Vineyard, a place that felt freer and softer than New York. The ocean air made it easier to breathe. Carly loved it there. It was the one place where life didn't feel stiff and controlled. But when they returned to New York, the walls around her family felt tight again. She attended elite schools, Riverdale Country School and later Sarah Lawrence College. They were full of smart, talented students, but also full of pressure. Behind all the opportunities stood shadows only she could feel. Carly's childhood home broke in ways that children should never have to witness. Her mother, Andrea, began an affair with a younger man who was supposed to be nothing more than a tutor for Carly's younger brother, Peter. But instead of teaching and leaving, the man became a part of their home like a second husband. Carly understood what was happening even though she was still young. She saw how he stole time and attention. She saw how her father stayed silent, pretending not to notice. That silence hurt more than anything. The man wasn't just a tutor to her, he became both a lover and a destroyer in the home. The house felt cracked, unstable, and confusing. The affair didn't stay hidden. Andrea didn't bother covering it up. And Richard didn't stop it. The children, Carly included, were the ones who felt the damage the most. Carly later said the affair hollowed out the home and left a shadow that followed her for life. But something even worse happened to Carly when she was only 7 years old. A teenage family guest named Billy, who was about 16, came to visit. He was older, stronger, and someone the family trusted. What began as innocent summer play, skinny dipping, turned into something dark and unbearable. In a pool house shower, he assaulted her. It didn't happen just once. It happened during several summers. Carly tried to tell her sisters, but they didn't believe her. They thought she was pretending to be grown up. When her mother eventually found out, the punishment was almost nothing. Billy was sent away for only a month. After that, the family never spoke about it again, as if silence could erase the damage. But it didn't erase anything. Carly was left alone with the trauma. She developed a stutter. She carried shame she did not deserve, and it shaped how she trusted, how she loved, and how she wrote. At 10 years old, Carly finally found a small window out of the pain, writing songs and poems. Her father played Chopin and Beethoven at home, and music became a second language for her. She picked up a ukulele from her jazz-loving uncle, and slowly, the melodies she created started giving shape to her emotions. She couldn't always speak easily because of her stutter, but the words flowed freely on paper. Her dyslexia made traditional learning difficult, but it pushed her toward rhythm and creative thinking. Writing became her lifeline, her way of breathing when everything else felt too heavy. Her family background was complicated. Her father was a German Jew. Her mother was Catholic with Cuban roots and believed their family had Spanish and Moorish ancestry. Carly grew up thinking she understood her heritage until 2017, when she took a DNA test on the show Finding Your Roots. The results shocked her. Her maternal grandmother was 40% African, which meant Carly herself was 10% African and 2% Native American. This discovery shook her identity in a deep way. She had spent her whole life thinking she knew who she was, only to learn there was more history in her blood than she ever imagined. The show traced records back to Cuba, proving her grandmother's African heritage. Carly carried that revelation into her later music, songs about truth, identity, and belonging. When Carly was 16, her father died suddenly of a heart attack. He was only 61. His death happened just 2 years after her mother's affair shattered the home. The loss was overwhelming. Carly felt grief not only for his death but also for everything unsaid between them. Her father was brilliant, but he had grown emotionally distant over the years. Now she would never have the chance to understand him fully or reconnect. His absence became a quiet echo in many of her songs. In 1963, Carly and her sister Lucy formed a band called the Simon Sisters. They sang folk music, played guitars, and soon landed a deal with Cap Records. They even appeared on a short-lived ABC show called Hootenanny. Their first album came out in 1964, and one song, Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod, reached the Billboard Hot 100. They toured small clubs, wearing matching dresses and sharing harmonies rooted in childhood memories. After a few years, Lucy left the group to get married, and Carly was forced to continue alone. But life kept knocking her down. Over the years, every one of her siblings died from cancer. Joanna died from thyroid cancer at 85. Lucy passed away just one day after Joanna, at age 82, from breast cancer. Peter, her younger brother and a talented photographer, died in 2018 after suffering cardiac arrest caused by lung cancer. Carly became the only surviving child in her family. Each sibling had created a life in the arts, and losing them one by one was like losing pieces of herself. Growing up, religion in Carly's home was confusing. Her father was depressive, her mother was distant, and emotional warmth was rare. Her mother marched for civil rights and believed in justice, but the emotional connection at home was fragile. Carly eventually walked away from organized religion, but the search for meaning stayed with her throughout her life. Her songs often wrestled with faith, identity, and loss. Martha's Vineyard, the place she loved since childhood, remained a constant anchor. It was where she first met James Taylor as a child. When she saw him again in 1971 on the cover of Time magazine, she said, "I'm going to marry that man." A year later, she did. The island became their haven, and later, even after divorce, Carly continued to write there. She wrote much of her memoir Boys in the Trees in her secluded home on the island, a place she called Hidden Star Hill. As a young adult, Carly tried college at Sarah Lawrence but didn't stay long. She left school to pursue music with Lucy. She traded academic comfort for the gritty, unpredictable Greenwich Village music scene. It was a big risk, but she believed in her dream. She played at legendary clubs like The Bitter End, but anxiety followed her everywhere. Stage fright overwhelmed her so badly that she collapsed during one show in Pittsburgh. Her stutter returned, and performing became a battle every night. She sometimes relied on tranquilizers to get through shows. In 1966, Carly attempted to go solo. She worked with Albert Grossman, who managed Bob Dylan. She recorded with members of the band, but the producer crossed a personal boundary. He made an unwanted move. Carly refused, saying, "I'm greener than that." She walked away, and the album was never released. The experience taught her to protect herself fiercely and never let anyone control her music or her path. Her breakthrough finally came when Jacob Brackman heard her demos. They collaborated on the song That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be, a deeply emotional track that became the first song on her debut album. It reached number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned her a Grammy nomination. The song was raw and honest, capturing everything she felt about relationships, pressure, and truth. Before fame found her, Carly worked odd jobs, modeled occasionally, and struggled like many artists do. Stage fright nearly ended her career before it even began. But she didn't quit. She kept going. In 1970, Elektra Records founder Jack Halsman heard a live demo of her song Alone and immediately knew she had something rare. He signed her, and in 1971, her self-titled debut album was released. It reached number 30 on the Billboard 200, marking the beginning of the career that would eventually produce one of the most iconic songs in history. Her story is one of pain turned into art, silence turned into voice, and wounds turned into lyrics. And through every struggle, Carly Simon became the woman who wrote songs that the world still listens to, still feels, and still wonders about. She recorded the album in just 4 days. Money was low, the schedule was tight, and everything felt rushed. But even in that pressure, her songs came from the deepest parts of her heart. One of them, Alone, grew out of therapy sessions and long nights where she felt completely invisible. The song hit people hard, especially anyone who had ever felt lonely. When the album reached number 30 on the Billboard 200, it was a huge moment. She didn't have massive promotion or a big machine behind her, yet more than 500,000 people bought that record. It meant something. People connected with the honesty in her voice, especially women who weren't used to hearing their private fears reflected in pop music. Then came the spark that changed everything. Her first single, That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be, didn't just question marriage, it challenged it. It grabbed the idea of the perfect marriage and forced people to look at the pressure behind it. In 1971, songs didn't do that. Some radio stations banned it. Others played it non-stop. It reached number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a national conversation. People argued about it, memorized it, and reacted to it with shock. She and Jacob Brackman had written something so bold that it shook people. But that shock made the song even more powerful. Overnight, Carly wasn't just another singer. She became a voice of truth. In 1972, she won the Grammy for Best New Artist. It should have been a joyful moment, but when she stepped on stage, her anxiety overwhelmed her. Her hands shook, her mouth dried up, and she could barely talk. She later said it was one of the scariest moments of her life. Beneath the lights and applause, she was still fighting fear, panic, and the pressure to be perfect. Fame felt like a crown of thorns, beautiful from afar but painful to wear. That same year, she almost died. After a painful breakup, she took too many Quaaludes, far more than anyone should. Someone found her unconscious and rushed her for help. In her memoir Boys in the Trees, she didn't hide the truth. She admitted that she came frighteningly close to disappearing. Fame didn't protect her from heartbreak. Sometimes, it made it worse. Touring with artists like Cat Stevens, being surrounded by noise and chaos, clashed with the sadness she carried inside. But that near-death moment changed her. After that, her music developed sharper edges and deeper shadows. In the studio, she clashed constantly with Elektra Records. The executives wanted safer songs. She wanted truth. Once, she smashed a guitar, not because she was angry, but because she refused to be shaped into a product. Even when the album had touches of commercial influence, her spirit was still inside every song. You could hear the tension, the fight, and the honesty. Even though her debut album sold 500,000 copies, she still felt like an outsider. Her childhood trauma whispered that she wasn't good enough. But her audience kept growing, drawn to her vulnerability. Then came No Secrets on November 28, 1972. It didn't just sell, it exploded. It hit number 1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there for 5 weeks. It went platinum within a year. It had 3 major hits, including Anticipation, The Right Thing to Do, and her most iconic song, You're So Vain. You're So Vain hit number 1 in January 1973 and stayed there for 3 weeks. More than 1 million copies were sold. The mystery behind the lyrics took on a life of its own. People guessed endlessly: Warren Beatty, Mick Jagger, David Bowie. Even Mick Jagger's voice was secretly on the track as backup vocals. In 2015, Carly finally confirmed that the third verse was about Warren Beatty. She had actually been at a real yacht party with him, and when he threw his hat in the air, she felt like she disappeared into the noise of fame. The line "I had some dreams, they were clouds and my coffee" came from real heartbreak, and listeners felt that truth. The song earned her 3 Grammy nominations in 1974. She won Best Pop Vocal Performance, Female. But success brought its own battles. Fame led to insomnia. She returned to therapy. Being famous meant constantly giving pieces of herself away. The bigger her career became, the heavier the emotional weight felt. Behind the scenes of No Secrets, the studio was filled with cocaine. Everyone around her used it like it was nothing. She never did, but she watched it destroy people. Seeing addiction so closely changed her. It made her stronger, clearer, and gave her even more depth as a songwriter. By late 1972, The Right Thing to Do was climbing the charts, reaching the top 20. The song captured the early sweetness of her relationship with James Taylor. They had married on November 3rd in Paul Simon's apartment. The next night, they announced it on stage at Taylor's Radio City Music Hall show. Carly had once seen James on a magazine cover and told her sister, "I'm going to marry that man." And she did. Their chemistry was powerful, but their problems were too. In January 1974, their daughter, Sarah Maria, was born. Shortly after, James admitted he was using heroin again. He flushed the drugs in front of her, but the addiction returned. Their life became a roller coaster, moments of love followed by emotional breakdowns and fear. Carly recorded Hotcakes while pregnant. It was released on January 11, 1974, and shot to number 3 on the Billboard 200. She appeared visibly pregnant on the album cover, something unheard of at the time. Mockingbird, her duet with James, became a top 5 hit. Haven't Got Time for the Pain reached number 14. Despite her success, her marriage continued to crumble. In 1975 she discovered James was cheating. The discovery shattered her. She later had a brief affair of her own, trying to regain balance, but it didn't fix anything. James saw multiple women, and Carly eventually confronted one. The woman mocked her, insulted her looks, and claimed James didn't love her. Carly left devastated. By 1976, their marriage was hanging by a thread. Therapy only revealed more infidelity. The final thread snapped. Things grew darker. During a heated argument, Carly swung a guitar at James in desperation. She missed, but the moment showed how broken things had become. In 1977, she recorded Nobody Does It Better for the James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. It became one of her biggest international hits. It reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, spent 7 weeks at number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart, and sold over 2 million copies. It earned Grammy, Oscar, and Golden Globe nominations. She didn't just sing the song, she claimed it. Around that time, another memory resurfaced. In 1965, she and her sister Lucy had met Sean Connery on a ship from England to New York. He invited them to his suite, where he proposed a threesome. Carly refused, but Lucy didn't. The moment stayed with Carly. Some people even believe this experience influenced the tone of You're So Vain. In 1978, she released Boys in the Trees. It went platinum. You Belong to Me hit number 6. The album mixed pop, jazz, and soul, but her life behind the scenes was filled with loss, miscarriage scares, and Taylor's relapses. Her songs held ghosts. They were born from real pain. In 1979, she joined the No Nukes concerts at Madison Square Garden alongside Bruce Springsteen and James Taylor. The event raised more than $500,000 for anti-nuclear efforts. Carly performed You're So Vain and You Belong to Me, but she was so frightened that she lip-synced part of her set. Later, she openly admitted it. After her divorce from James Taylor in 1983, she entered a painful custody battle. Despite his addiction issues, she still had to fight hard for her children. When she finally won custody, she said she felt emotionally drained. In 1980, she released Come Upstairs, which reached number 36. The single Jessie hit number 11 and captured the loneliness she was living through. She often said she felt lost during those years, torn between being a mother and staying relevant in a changing music world. In 1987, she married poet James Hart. He brought stability, but in 2007 he revealed he was bisexual, something they had never discussed. The revelation reopened old wounds from her childhood and shook her deeply. Her health was failing at the same time, and she felt completely overwhelmed. But she spoke openly about it, turning the pain into part of her story. In 1988, she recorded Let the River Run for the film Working Girl. It reached number 46, but it won an Oscar, a Grammy, and a Golden Globe, making her the first artist ever to win all three with the same song. It revived her career. In 1982, she discovered she had vocal nodes. Surgery was risky, but she took the chance. After months of recovery, she shifted toward jazz and released Torch in 1981, which reached number 23. The album helped her heal. In 1986, she recorded Coming Around Again for the film Heartburn. It reached number 18. Behind the scenes, she was dealing with James Taylor's near-fatal overdose and the emotional turmoil of co-parenting. In 1989, she released My Romance, a collection of jazz standards. It didn't top charts, but she wasn't chasing hits anymore. She was depressed, struggling with the pressure of an industry that had moved on. She later revealed she underwent electroconvulsive therapy during this period. In 1990, she released Have You Seen Me Lately? During a turbulent time in her love life. The album stayed on the charts for 32 weeks. Better Not Tell Her reached number 4 on the adult contemporary chart and became her biggest hit of the decade. In 1997, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She underwent a double mastectomy and chemotherapy. She spoke openly about the experience, urging others to get checked. During treatment, she worked on film noir, which reached number 54. In 2000, she recorded the bedroom tapes with her daughter, Sally. It reached number 92 but became one of her rawest, most emotional projects. In 2004, she released Reflections, a greatest hits album that went gold in the US and UK. She donated profits to literacy programs in honor of her father. In 2004, she performed at the Athens Olympics. She stumbled once but recovered quickly and owned the performance. In 2005, she released Moonlight Serenade, which earned her another Grammy nomination. When her second marriage ended in 2007, she moved back to Martha's Vineyard and began writing children's books. Her first, Midnight Farm, had already sold 100,000 copies. Writing helped her heal. In 2015, during her book tour for Boys in the Trees, she confirmed that the second verse of You're So Vain was about Warren Beatty. In 2020, during the pandemic, she released Singer, an album of Jimmy Webb covers. One track, Easy for You to Say, struck deeply as she reflected on her past, especially her relationship with James Taylor. In 2023, she released a new memoir focused on Martha's Vineyard, grief, and healing. In 2024, she received the Gershwin Prize. She stood beside James Taylor again, and their duet reached more than 5 million viewers. It was more than nostalgia. It was closure. It was two people who had been through everything finally facing the past with peace.